Welcome back to our playthrough of Walden. We are now in the late summer. We're starting out at Ralph Waldo Emerson's house, and we have another golden arrowhead to start with.
Ah, there you are, Henry. This new poem of yours is exceptional. I think it may be the purest strain and the loftiest that has yet peeled from this unpoetic American forest. Tell me, what are you working on next? And have you thought much of publishing your work so that it might reach beyond our small hamlet?
Publishing? That's crazy. What do we got here?
My dear Miss Fuller, it is good to hear from you that work on the next issue of The Dial proceeds. I'm sending you a new piece that my young friend Thoreau has written for our journal. Talk with him but a few hours and you will find him a remarkable person, I am certain. He is a treasured companion, and I have had the most memorable conversations with him about nature and all else. We are all well, and young Waldo sends you his love. R.W. Emerson.
So a recommendation to Margaret Fuller on behalf of Thoreau from Emerson. And here's a draft of Friendship for the Dial. Sending our writing to Margaret Fuller for review. Two solitary stars, unmeasured systems far between us roll, but by our conscious light we are determined to one pole. There's nothing in the world I know that can escape from a love, from every depth it goes below and every height above. It waits as waits the sky until the clouds go by, yet shines serenely on with an eternal day, alike when they are gone and when they stay. Here on the table behind us now we can also find The Dial, Magazine for Literature, Philosophy, and Religion. Volume 1 of Emerson and Margaret Fuller's new journal for transcendental writers. Perhaps if you apply yourself, you may have an article published here. This was a journal that Margaret Fuller started and later Emerson edited as well. Some passages from the first issue. To the editors, to the reader, with diligent hands and good intent we set down our dial on the earth. We wish it may resemble that instrument in its celebrated happiness, that of measuring no hours but those of sunshine. Contents of this issue, a short essay on critics. We will go to the critic who trusts genius and trusts us, who knows that all good writing must be spontaneous, and who will write out the bill of fare for the public as he read it for himself, forgetting vulgar rules, with spirit free to judge each author by his own intent, nor think one standard for all minds is meant. Poem, to the Aurora Borealis. Is not human fantasy wild Aurora, likest thee, blossoming in nightly dreams, like thy shifting meteor gleams? Notes from the Journal of a Scholar. Homer I read with continually new pleasure. Criticism of Homer is like criticism upon natural scenery. You may say what it is and what is wanting, but you do not pretend to find fault. The Iliad is before us as a pile of mountains, so blue and distant, so simple and real, even so much an image of majesty and power. I love the notes from the Journal of a Scholar, and if I recall, that was written by Emerson's brother. The Religion of Beauty. The devout mind is a lover of nature. Where there is beauty, it feels at home. It has not then to shut the windows of the senses and take refuge from the world within its own thoughts to find eternal life. Beauty never limits us, never degrades us. We are free spirits when with nature. Then the divine presence in nature and in the soul. The doctrine of inspiration is of not small importance, for as it is received in one form or another, it will bless a man or curse him. Inspiration is the direct and immediate action of God upon man. All men by nature are not capable of the same degree of inspiration. Furthermore, the degree of inspiration depends no less upon faithful compliance with the conditions upon which inspiration can alone be attained. Then sympathy. Lately, alas, I knew a gentle boy whose features were all cast in virtue's mold, as one she had designed for beauty's toy, but after manned him for her own stronghold. If I but love that virtue which he is, though it be scented in the morning air, still shall we be dearest acquaintances, nor mortals know a sympathy more rare. And then the Orphic Sayings by A. Bronson Alcott. Enthusiasm. Believe, youth, that your heart is an oracle. Trust her instinctive auguries. obey her divine leadings, nor listen too fondly to the uncertain echoes of your head. The here is the profit of your soul. That might be a typo. Hope. Hope defies man. It is the apotheosis of the soul, the prophecy and fulfillment of her destinies. Vocation. Engage in nothing that cripples or degrades you. Your first duty is self-culture. Your self is sacred, profane it not. It's interesting. Some passages from the first issue of The Dial. While we're here at Emerson's house, we'll still pick up the toys around here.
Good afternoon.
Oh, and Emerson, of course, wants us to go back and pick up his copy of the Iliad, which we saw in our first video. And our food stores are low, as indicated by that red meter in the corner, so we'll stop and pick up some more of these blueberries. You can see the leaves are starting to turn red as we're now in late summer. One of the great things that we talked about in the introduction is when an ecological, an environmental game will show us that nature is not always the same, right? That there are changes, and this is a great game to highlight that. The seasonal changes are one of the biggest parts of this game, one of the things that you're really meant to notice. Alright, get enough food so that our meter gets green. We're also pretty inspired from reading The Dial. There's a sign pointing us to Concord.
Every day or two, I stroll to the village to hear some of the gossip which is incessantly going on there, circulating either from mouth to mouth or from newspaper to newspaper, and which, taken in homeopathic doses, was really as refreshing in its way as the rustle of leaves and the peeping of frogs.
We have a little white-footed mouse here. I'm going to add that to our list of animals. By withdrawing into the garret and associating with spiders and mice, I am determined to meet myself face to face sooner or later. There goes Waldo running by. Alright, we're going to head into town. If you are playing to collect the achievements in this game, entering town will negate the achievement for being the hermit, of course. You can play through the entire game without ever visiting town, if you choose.
One afternoon, near the end of the first summer, when I went to the village to get a shoe from the cobbler's, I was seized and put into jail because, as I have elsewhere related, I did not pay a tax to, or recognize the authority of, the state which buys and sells men, women, and children like cattle at the door of its senate house. I had gone down to the woods for other purposes, but wherever a man goes, men will pursue and paw him with their dirty institutions and, if they can, constrain him to belong to their desperate oddfellow society.
Well, our first step into town, and we have been arrested because we did not pay our poll tax at the general store first. So here we are, in living the experience that Henry actually had during his stay at Walden. He was arrested for not paying that tax, and he spent a night in jail, and was, bailed out probably by his aunt after spending a night there, and the fees were paid off. But Henry again objected ethically to paying the tax because he felt that it was supporting slavery in the war, and the Mexican War. Here on the bed, you can see a recreation of Henry's journal. I like this passage. Write often. Write upon 1,000 themes rather than long at a time, not trying to turn too many feeble somersaults in the air. Your time in jail has inspired you to write about the relationship between citizens and their government. So we can read the passage from Civil Disobedience, a draft here. We have an arrowhead as well.
Under a government which imprisons any unjustly, the true place for a just man is also a prison.
So first, the anti-slavery poster. There are thousands who are in opinion opposed to slavery and to the war, who yet in effect do nothing to put an end to them, who, esteeming themselves children of Washington and Franklin, sit down with their hands in their pockets and say that they do not know what to do and do nothing. And then the Mexican War poster. When a sixth of the population of a nation, which is undertaken to be the refuge of liberty, are slaves, and a whole country is unjustly overrun and conquered by a foreign army, I think that it is not too soon for honest men to rebel and revolutionize. What makes this duty the more urgent is that ours is the invading army. We can start reading some of the passages from
I have paid
the
no
book.
poll tax for 6 years. I was put into a jail once on this account for one night, and as I stood considering the walls of solid stone, 2 or 3 feet thick, the door of wood and iron, a foot thick, and the iron grating which strained the light, I could not help being struck with the foolishness of that institution which treated me as if I were mere flesh and blood and bones to be locked up. I did not for a moment feel confined, and the wall seemed a great waste of stone and mortar.
So that arrowhead actually takes us out of the jail for the rest of the game. I was hoping we would have a chance to read a few of those passages, but you can go back in the video and pause if you want to read some of the draft of civil disobedience.
As I walked in the woods to see the birds and squirrels, so I walked to the village to see the men and boys. Instead of the wind among the pines, I heard the carts rattle. In one direction from my house, there was a colony of muskrats in the river meadows. Under the grove of elms and buttonwoods in the other horizon was a village of busy men, as curious to me as if they had been prairie dogs.
I think it's funny that here we can, if you can catch one of the people walking through town. Oh, we added a lot of things really fast. But when you focus in on a townsperson, it lists them as Homo sapiens. So we should add Homo sapiens to our species list, right? Technically, the first Homo sapiens we saw was Emerson, but I do not wish to flatter my townsmen, nor to be flattered by them, for that will not advance either of us. We need to be provoked, goaded like oxen, as we are into a trot. He also had another passage that sort of triggered as I was looking around, and I'm going to go back and see what that was. I have traveled a good deal in Concord, and everywhere in shops and offices and fields the inhabitants have appeared to me to be doing penance in 1,000 remarkable ways. Interesting. So here we have another golden sort of flashback arrowhead.
Henry and John have decided to start their own school, Father. It means they won't be able to help much in the pencil factory, but they already have several students promised to attend, and it will be a fine, uncommon school, won't it, Henry?
So we've reached the Thoreau house. This is where Henry and his family live. There's a pie sitting out so we can fill our food meter by getting some home-cooked meal here. And there was a memory of the school that John and Henry started together. Growing along here we have a plant. Let's see what it is. If we can.
Huh.
Oh yeah, there we go. Ground ivy. Ivy is a truly grotesque vegetation whose forms and color we see imitated in bronze, a sort of architectural foliage. So we'll add the ground ivy as a plant we've discovered today. The day will be ending soon. We come in here, it looks like we can get some freshly folded and cleaned laundry to make green our meter with clothing. On the wall here is a picture of our sister Sophia. Dear Sister Sophia, when Robin Redbreast brings back the spring, you, I hope, will lay aside your academic cares and will dare to play the fool when the occasion warrants, either with me in the woods or in my boat on Walden Pond, caressing the flowing waters with your hand. Historical picture of his sister. And our first day of late summer has ended. So you can see the mark in the journal where he's indicated the new season. We'll look through these entries again here. Okay. We'll choose to wake where we are and look around the Thoreau house a bit more. So, in Sophia's letter to us in our last playthrough, she mentioned that she would leave something here on the gaming table. This is a nice little gaming table with the fern leaves on it. An unconscious despair is concealed even under what are called the games and amusements of mankind. Let's see what Sophia left.
Dear Henry, I have set a little game for you based on our own favorite board, the woods. Here is the first piece of the puzzle. I rise above the forest floor, where once I lay in days of yore. A gentle hand has made formation in places hidden, though not forbidden. Come find me if you seek inspiration. Bon chance, Sophia.
Ah, so she's set up a scavenger hunt for us. So we'll have to see if we can spot her clue later in the game. The clues will be indicated on the map. You can see the icon now for Sophia's game on the map. There's a little flower over near our cabin. While we're here in the Thoreau house, let's take a look around at some other things. Passage into the dining room. We can't go through the whole house, but you can take a peek through the window. Here on the wall is Mother's silk embroidery. So Cynthia, Henry's mother, created this silk embroidery, which you can now see in the Concord Museum. The tenderness and affection of woman, her mild prophetic eye, her finer instincts exert an influence on men from which she is never weary, so that in this sense the umbilical cord is never cut, though the apron string may be. Here on the desk is The Seasons by Henry Thoreau, age 12. This is a childhood essay about the changing of the seasons over the course of a year. It seems you've always been fascinated by the details of nature. You can read a little passage from his childhood essay. And then here, again, the journal. An authentic cover from one of the journals. A draft of an essay that he wrote called A Walk to Wachusett. Here we've got some letters laid out. Sophia is going through this box of old letters. There may be some difficult memories here. Let's see what one of them is.
July 1838. Dear Messieurs Thoreau, my sister, whom you know, has sent me a copy of the Yeoman's Gazette with your advertisement for a new Concord Academy, and suggested I contact you regarding the education of my son, Edmund Sewell. Edmund is a bright pupil, and is in need of instruction preparatory to a collegiate course with the usual English branches of study. I will send him with my daughter Ellen as chaperone to meet you at your earliest convenience. Sincerely, Reverend Edmund Quincy Sewell.
So young Edmund Sewell is going to be a student in John and Henry's school. Again, this is from an old box of letters, so this is something that happened before Henry moved to the pond.
Dear Ellen, Sophia tells me you enjoyed the poems I sent, so here are some more brief lines for you with my best wishes. Nature never makes haste. Her systems revolve at an even pace. The bud swells imperceptibly, without hurry or confusion, as though the short spring days were an eternity. Why then should man hasten, as if anything less than an eternity were allotted for the last deed? As the wise man is not anxious that time wait for him, neither does he wait for it. Henry Thoreau.
A poem that he wrote for Ellen. Here's the Old Yeoman's Gazette with an advertisement for Concord Academy. Concord Academy notice of opening fall of 1838. Messrs. John Thoreau and Henry D. Thoreau are to offer a school for a limited number of pupils of both sexes to be opened on Monday, September the 10th, Instruction will be given in the usual English branches: Welpley's Universal History, Smith's Theory of Moral Sentiments, Paley's Moral Philosophy, Euler's Algebra, Trigonometry, Application of Algebra to Geometry, for $6 a quarter. And then an old letter from Ellen, thanking you for your family's hospitality and the poems.
August 1838. Dear Sophia, it was so kind of your family to welcome us, and I hope we will see you all again soon. Edmund looks forward to starting his studies with your brothers, and I'm sure we will all see much more of each other. The poems Henry sent came safely and pleased us much. The sonnet entitled Beauty is my favorite. Best regards, Ellen Sewell.
More food from home. So while we're in town, find a couple more arrowheads and visit a couple of places.
Society is commonly too cheap. We meet at the post office and at the sociable, and about the fireside every night. We live thick and are in each other's way, and stumble over one another, and I think that we thus lose some respect for one another.
You can go into the general store.
Hello, Henry.
Good afternoon. The cost of a thing is the amount of what I will call life, which is required to be exchanged for it, immediately or in the long run.
So we could talk with the storekeeper, Mr. Hosmer, and sometimes I am reminded that the mechanics and shopkeepers stay in their shops not only all the forenoon, but all the afternoon too. I think that they deserve some credit for not having all committed suicide long ago.
What can I do for you?
Here you can choose if you want to purchase from several categories: food, fuel, clothing, and household. As we know, these things will make certain aspects of maintaining those stats a little bit easier. Here we had the option to pay our back taxes or pay the bills that to assist our family. And then we can also buy some tools that will help make things a bit faster. Look around at a few things in the shop and get some more passages here. So that passage was we saw earlier. The luxuries. With respect to luxuries and comforts, the wisest have ever lived a more simple and meager life than the poor. Men labor under a mistake. By a seeming fate, commonly called necessity, they are employed laying up treasures which moth and rust will corrupt, and thieves break through and steal. It is a fool's life, as they will find when they get to the end of it, if not before. A fishing creel and rods. The wildness and adventure that are in fishing still recommend it to me. Perhaps I have owed to this employment my closest acquaintance with nature. There's another anti-slavery poster. More luxuries.
Interesting.
Coal. When a man is warmed by the several modes which I have described, what does he want next? Surely not more warmth of the same kind as more and richer food, larger and more splendid houses, finer and more abundant clothing, more numerous, incessant, and hotter fires, and the like. It will soon be forgotten in these days of stoves that we used to roast potatoes in the ashes after the Indian fashion. It is remarkable what a value is still put upon wood, even in this age and in this new country, a value more permanent and universal than that of gold. After all our discoveries and inventions, no man will go by a pile of wood. We got apples? Surely the apple is the noblest of fruits. Let the most beautiful or the swiftest have it. That should be the going price of apples. New clothes. A man who has at length found something to do will not need to get a new suit to do it in. I believe the shopkeeper is meant to be Alfred Hosmer, who, later had a whole history of helping to establish Thoreau's reputation, a photographer and shopkeeper.
Most of the luxuries and many of the so-called comforts of life are not only not indispensable, but positive hindrances to the elevation of mankind.
Okay, so we'll move from the general store next door into the post office, which is next to the bank. But first, let's see what this little arrowhead is here.
The village appeared to me a great newsroom, and on one side, to support it, as once at Redding and Company's on State Street, they kept nuts and raisins, or salt and meal and other groceries. For my part, I could easily do without the post office. I think that there are very few important communications made through it.
What is this on the wall? President Polk. President James K. Polk, the 11th President of the United States, a strong supporter of expansion. Some believe his policies in the West will result in the spreading of slavery. Flashback?
Hello then, Henry. Here for your mail or just snooping for news? I hear there will be a rally soon about these slavery questions. That abolitionist from Boston, Mr. Garrison, will be speaking, but I don't know much about such things.
For a long time, I was a reporter to a journal, of no very wide circulation, whose editor has never yet seen fit to print the bulk of my contributions, and, as is too common for writers, I got only my labor from my pains.
Maybe a double reference there, both to the actual journal that he kept and to the dial that he was submitting pieces for and wasn't being paid. A few things on the wall. Map of Concord. I've surveyed the country on every side of where I live. In imagination, I have bought all the farms in succession. I walked over each farmer's premises, tasted his wild apples, discoursed on husbandry with him, took his farm at any price, mortgaging it to him in my mind. There's a lecture on William Lloyd Garrison on the immediate emancipation of slaves in the United States. The Concord Lyceum holds lectures for the improvement of knowledge, the advancement of popular education, and the diffusion of useful information throughout the community. Newspapers. We are eager to tunnel under the Atlantic and bring the old world some weeks nearer the new. But perchance the first news that will leak through into the broad flapping American ear will be that the Princess Adelaide has the whooping cough. Looks like we can also grab one of those. The Liberator, Volume 2. Our country is the world, our countrymen are mankind. To the public, I will strenuously contend for the immediate enfranchisement of our slave population. On this subject, I do not wish to think or speak or write with moderation. No. Tell the man whose house is on fire to give a moderate alarm. Tell him to moderately rescue his wife from the hand of the ravisher. Tell the mother to gradually extricate her babe from the fire into which it has fallen, but urge me not to use moderation in a cause like the present. I am in earnest. I will not equivocate. I will not excuse. I will not retreat a single inch, and I will be heard. Call for subscribers to the Liberator who believe in the cause of freedom and justice for all, no price but liberty. From William Lloyd Garrison. Some notices we'll grab on the wall. Odd jobs. Carpentry at Emerson's, of course. We know about that one. 3 cents for the work. Wood choppers, so when we find places to chop logs, we can do that for 2 cents a piece. An advertisement for the pencils that his family sells. We can do surveying for 50 cents. And there's another tax notice about that tax I never paid.
My dear Thoreau, believe me when I say that I have tried to do you the favor of getting your article into the hands of publishers, but I have not had success in this errand, and have hardly a hope that it will be immediate, if ever. I know you have written a good thing, too good, I fear, to be profitable to yourself or attractive to publishers. I will remain your champion in these matters, however, and entreat you to send me that one piece you were working on when we met at your family home. Remember me to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Yours heartily, Horace Greeley.
Dear Mr. Thoreau, Dr. Agassiz was quite satisfied with the specimens you sent last month. He says to tell you that the small mud turtle was actually a very rare species quite distinct from the snapping turtle as you labeled it. We would be very much obliged if you could supply us with samples of the following fishes from your small pond and can pay 75 cents apiece. 5 common shiners,
Okay.
3 yellow perch, 1 walleye. Sincerely,
There's a list of
James
the first
Elliott
things we
Cabot,
can collect
assistant to Dr. Agassiz,
for
Harvard
Agassiz to make
University.
some money. And here we recognize the bluets that we identified before.
I observed that the vitals of the village were the grocery, the barroom, the post office, and the bank, and, as a necessary part of the machinery, they kept a bell, a big gun, and a fire engine at convenient places, and the houses were so arranged so that every traveler had to run the gauntlet, and every man, woman, and child might get a lick at him. Interesting.
Ah, mixed in with the leaves. Shall I not have intelligence with the earth? Am I not partly leaves and vegetable mold myself? We also have piper grass. That's piper grass. Have Adam chop him up, turn his roots upward to the sun. Don't let him have a fiber in the shade. If you do, he'll turn himself to the other side and be as green as a leek in 2 days. We'll add piper grass to the list. You can hear the ticking of the clock, meaning the day is winding down. Oh, and we recognize these as well, the oxeye daisies. Okay, back to our journal. So, let's see the species we found today. We have the piper grass, the ground ivy. We saw people and we saw a white-footed mouse. Sort of combining 2 days there. I think we saw only the piper grass today, right? Okay, we'll wrap that up and we'll go back to the cabin. So day 3 of late summer.
When I return to my house, I find that visitors have been there and left their cards. Either a bunch of flowers, or a wreath of evergreen, or a name in pencil on a yellow walnut leaf, or a chip. I was as much affected by the faint hum of a mosquito making its invisible and unimaginable tour through my apartment at earliest dawn as I could be by any trumpet that ever sang of fame.
I'm adding mosquito to the list. Probably not the thing that most people want to hear when they're out on a walk in the woods, but I like that he appreciates the sound at least. Grab a little bit of food, and let's go see if we can find Sophia's game. So if we look at our map, you can see it's almost directly ahead of us on the map there. Aha! So what we're finding here is called the Solitude Cairn, where you can come for inspiration by standing near this.
I never found the companion that was so companionable as solitude. A man thinking or working is always alone. Let him be where he will. Solitude is not measured by the miles of space that intervene between a man and his fellows.
And in the background here we can see a couple things we identified again. Those oxeye daisies and the Indian grass. Let's see what Sophia left.
Congratulations, you've solved the first riddle. Now let's see how far you can get in the game. Between Peak of Haywood and Water's Edge, in a patch of daisies and a bit of sedge, nearby, a perfect point for fish and fowl, and in the evening, a hooting owl. Love, Sophia.
So the next riddle for her game, and lots of color has come back into the world now.
One day, I observed two large ants, the one red, the other much larger, nearly half an inch long and black, fiercely contending with one another. Looking farther, I was surprised to find that the chips were covered with such combatants, that it was not a duellum, but a bellum, a war between two races of ants. It was the only battle which I have ever witnessed, the only battlefield I ever trod while the battle was raging. Internecine war, the red Republicans on the one hand, and the black imperialists on the other. On every side they were engaged in deadly combat, yet without any noise that I could hear, and human soldiers never fought so resolutely.
I was as excited by this battle of ants. Oh, there's a stump passage too. Stumps 30 or 40 years old at least will still be sound at the core, though the sapwood has all become vegetable mold, as appears by the scales of the thick bark forming a ring level with the earth 4 or 5 inches distant from the heart. Let's turn back to the journal and see what that last passage was about the ants. I was as excited by this battle of ants as if they had been men. The more you think of it, the less the difference. Certainly, there is not the fight recorded in conquered history that will bear a moment's comparison with this. The result of this battle will be as important and memorable to those whom it concerns as those of the Battle of Bunker Hill. Which is a funny statement, considering that the first fight of the American Revolutionary War was fought and conquered. Certainly, there is not the fight recorded in conquered history that will bear a moment's comparison with this. While we're here, really noticeable fern. Pine needles first, apparently. As I stand over the insect crawling amid the pine needles on the forest floor and endeavoring to conceal itself from my sight, I am reminded of the greater benefactor and intelligence that stands over me, the human insect. But here we have the cinnamon fern, which we'll add. I wade to the luxuriant cinnamon fern. Its great fronds curving this way and that remind me of a tropical vegetation. My clothes are covered with the pale brown wool which has rubbed off their stems. More of the Indian grass and the oxeye daisy.
Interesting.
Actually, this one is the tall cinquefoil. Let's add that. The cinquefoil is closed on a cloudy day, and when the sun shines, it is turned towards it. Okay. Let's see if we can recognize that one going forward. Okay, so we found Sophia's first clue. Her next clue is marked on the map there. We also need to pick up the book that Emerson asked for, so we're not far from the Reading Rock. Stop and pick that up as well.
I kept Homer's Iliad on my table through the summer, though I looked at his page only now and then.
Okay, so here's the Iliad again. We'll take that to Emerson. Looks like Sophia has left a letter. You can tell by the leaves that she leaves, because she was also an amateur botanist.
August 1845. Dear Henry, don't forget that we care for you and miss you at home. Should you visit, I have left a surprise for you on the game table, as I know you love a good challenge. Stay safe and healthy. Your sister, Sophia.
Sometimes, in a summer morning, I sat in my sunny doorway from sunrise till noon, wrapped in a reverie, amidst the pines and hickories and sumacs, in undisturbed solitude and stillness, while the birds sang around or flitted noiseless through the house, until by the sun falling in at my west window, or the noise of some traveler's wagon on the distant highway, I was reminded of the lapse of time. As I sit at my window this summer afternoon, hawks are circling about my clearing, the tantivy of wild pigeons, flying by 2 and 3s athwart my view, or perching restless on the white pine boughs behind my house, give a voice to the air. A fish hawk dimples the glassy surface of the pond and brings up a fish. A mink steals out of the marsh before my door and seizes a frog by the shore. The sedge is bending under the weight of the reed birds flitting hither and thither, and for the last half hour I have heard the rattle of railroad cars, now dying away.
What's this little flower? So we're passing the tall anemone. Add that to the list. Small flower, easy to overlook. More Indian grass. And let's see if we recognize cinquefoil now. Yep. Over here, these are the oxeye daisies, of course. You can see the difference now. We'll come back to our bean field now.
Wishing to earn $10 or $12 by some honest and agreeable method, in order to meet my unusual expenses, I planted about 2 acres and a half of light and sandy soil, chiefly with beans.
So what I'm doing here is clearing away some of the weeds so that we have a field to plant in.
What shall I learn of beans or beans of me? I cherish them, I hoe them. Early and late I have an eye to them, and this is my day's work. Fellow travelers, as they rattled by, compared it aloud with the fields which they had passed, so that I came to know how I stood in the agricultural world. Mine was, as it were, the connecting link between wild and cultivated fields. As some states are civilized, and others half-civilized, and others savage or barbarous, so my field was, though not in a bad sense, a half-cultivated field.
One interesting thing as we're doing the weeding here, when you visit Walden today, there's an area with a sign that indicates where Henry's bean field was, and it makes you think that it was much smaller than it was in real life. It was 2.5 acres, and it ran all the way down to the road leading from Concord out past the pond, which makes sense with the passage we just heard about travelers stopping to talk with him. Getting a little tired out, so we'll rest and
In the course of the summer, it appeared by the arrowheads which I turned up in hoeing that an extinct nation had anciently dwelt here.
So we will get tired faster because our fuel is low and food is not full.
As I drew a still fresher soil about the rows with my hoe, I disturbed the ashes of unchronicled nations who in primeval years lived under these heavens, and their small implements of war and hunting were brought to the light of this modern day.
Okay, we've cleared the entire bean field, so now we just have to plant our beans. There's 2 rows. I gotta get too tired out. Gotta give them a little chance to rest. Again, our stores are low, so we'll get tired faster. See how many of these we can get planted before the day ends, and or I get too tired. Hear the crickets and the hum of the mosquito. Okay, that's 3 rows, 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 left. Don't know if we'll make it. Yeah, I can hear the ticking of the clock. I don't think we're gonna get these last 2 rows in. And our day has ended, so we didn't quite get the whole field planted. You can review the journal passages. Okay, now we're going to wake up back at the cabin, very tired, with a new season.
Summer is gone now, with all its infinite wealth, and still nature is genial to me. Though I no longer pluck so many berries on the hill, still I behold the same inaccessible beauty around me.
It's raining out. So this is where we'll stop video 2 and continue in the next one with early fall.